Hello and welcome. Today we're going to be looking at our first writing informative passage. It's called A Movable Street, Haussmann's New Paris. Again, as we did in the argument passages, we're going to be going through all 11 questions, the entire passage here, so you get an idea of how to approach these informative passages and are ready to ace the SAT writing and language section. If you haven't seen the previous videos, go check those out because those give valuable tips on how to approach the writing argument passages, which are another topic on the writing and language section. If you like these videos or find them informative, please be sure to like and subscribe. And with that, let's get started on this passage. Here it is. If you were to travel all over the world, you might notice that each of the world's most famous cities is characterized by a certain look. Tokyo offers neon billboards and colorful signs. 1. Paris stands out from the base of the Eiffel Tower, a system of wide tree-lined avenues and low neoclassical buildings made of gray stone. Alright, so it wants to add another example to the claim made in the first sentence of the paragraph, which is that each of the world's most famous cities has a certain look. Tokyo was almost entirely rebuilt after World War II. That doesn't really say anything about its look. Same with B, talking about a financial center, but nothing about its look. Dubai features glittering skyscrapers rising out of the desert. That it completely says how Dubai looks, its own certain look, and that's going to be our answer. Move on to the next question. This area has been inhabited for thousands of years, therefore its current look is a relatively recent development. Well, we have this area has been inhabited for thousands of years, and it's a recent development, so we have two contrasting ideas here. So we need a contrast word, not therefore, which is a cause and effect word. We need a contrast word. And we find that contrast word in the word however. That's a contrast word. It sets up that conflict between those two ideas, and that's our answer. Let's move on to the next question. Visiting Paris 200 years ago, the city would have looked very different. This is a modifier question. They always like to put modifier questions at the beginning of passages. Right, so visiting Paris 200 years ago, well, who is doing the visiting Paris 200 years ago? It would have been you, the reader, right? Now that has to be the first word after this because the visiting Paris 200 years ago is the modifier that's modifying the you or the person, the reader, right? So you has to be the first word right here. So we're going to start with you, which is answer choice D. None of the others start with you. So for those, right, like for answer choice A, the city is the one doing the visiting Paris 200 years ago. It doesn't make any sense. In choice B, Paris is the one doing the visiting Paris. And then choice 3, or in answer choice 3, C, the difference in the city is visiting the Paris. And that makes no sense. You are the one visiting the Paris, so you has to be the first word that it's modifying the right thing. So let's move on to our next question. All right, Paris's transformation was largely the work of one man, Georges Eugene Haussmann. All right, how are we going to approach this question? So let's see. So Georges Eugene Haussmann, whose official title was prefect of the sign department. That is an independent clause there. It has the was as the verb and it has Georges Eugene Haussmann as the subject. That's an independent clause. So we can separate that using a colon. We can't separate that using nothing or a comma. So we can get rid of those. And then again, a semicolon also does this thing, does separating two things. Then we have choices A or B. Right, choice B also has a semicolon that separates the two clauses, but it doesn't have a comma after Georges Eugene Haussmann. So it just says Georges Eugene Haussmann, whose official title was prefect of the sign department. Now imagine if you were to take this part and make it its own sentence, and you just had Georges Eugene Haussmann, because it's an independent, or Georges Eugene Haussmann, whose official title was prefect of the sign department. That is an independent clause, so we can put that on its own. And if we say Georges Eugene Haussmann, that's the introductory clause before this description of whose official title was prefect of the sign department. So this is an introductory clause, so we set it off using a comma. We have to have that comma, and our answer is choice A. Let's move on to the next question. At the time, the city was divided into many small, cramped neighborhoods that was disconnected from one another, making transportation difficult. Well, many small cramped neighborhoods is plural. We need to have a plural, right? Was is singular, is singular, has been is singular, has is singular, so has been is singular and past tense. And then we have were, which is our only plural word, only plural verb, and that's our answer. Move on to the next question. So let's read the entire paragraph again because they want us to rearrange the sentences. Let's keep a close eye to where something looks wrong. So we have, or like the order of something looks wrong or something's not logical. Paris's transformation was largely the work of one man, Georges Eugene Haussmann, whose official title was prefect of the sign department. He was appointed to recreate Paris by Napoleon III, who had declared himself Emperor of France in 1851 and wanted to cement his legacy by creating a modern capital. At the time, the city was divided into many small, cramped neighborhoods that were disconnected from one another, making transportation difficult. Moreover, the overcrowding in these areas led to unhygienic conditions in which disease spread easily. The aims of Napoleon's reforms were twofold: to make Paris more aesthetically pleasing and to make it more functional. Infant mortality rates in these neighborhoods was sky high, and epidemics were very difficult to control. The first thing I see is that we're talking about Napoleon's reforms, but we have Napoleon up here. So this should really be somewhere around here, right? So it says Napoleon III appointed this guy, and then he wanted this. He wanted what was going on in sentence 5. So first sentence 2 happened, and then he wanted what was happening in sentence 5. So sentence 5 is going to go right after sentence 2. After sentence 2 is our answer. And we can move on to the next question. Let's go. Question 7. To address these problems, Haussmann installed several wide boulevards. These both opened the city visually and made it easier to get from place to place. Alright, let's see. So we're trying to combine these two sentences. Let's look at our shortest answer, right, first, because how you go about these problems is you find the shortest answer that works, the most concise answer that still works. You always do that. So to address these problems, Haussmann installed several wide boulevards, which both opened the city visually and made it easier to get from place to place. So the which seems to work. It puts the sentences together and it makes a smooth transition. That works, and it's our shortest answer, so it's the shortest answer that works. And that's our answer. So let's move on to the next question. All right, down here in this next paragraph, other changes that Haussmann made to the city included the addition of more green space in the form of both large and small public parks, constructing 2 new train stations to connect this city to the rest of the country, and the modification of the city's borders. So this is a parallel structure kind of question, right? So here we have the addition of, and then the modification of. So this feels like it should be the construction of, to keep the same tense, the same form, which usually has the same ending, so it has to be the construction of. The construction of is our answer. Let's keep going. Consequently, Paris's population quadrupled in number of people by a factor of 4. Whoa. That is so repetitive, I don't even know where to start. Right? We say quadrupled, and then we say by a factor of 4. That's repetitive. We say in number of people, and we say population. Right? That's incredibly repetitive. Then we have increase in population count. We already said population. Of the number of people, we already said population, by a factor of 4. That's just, whoa, way too wordy. Then we just have consequently Paris's population quadrupled. It gives the same message of multiplying by 4 without any of the extraneous information. Then we have D increased and grew. This is also concise, not as concise as C, and doesn't get the same message of the number of people increasing by a factor of 4, right? Saying it increased and grew doesn't mean anything. Right? First of all, increased and grew are repetitive because they mean the same thing. And second of all, throughout human history, the population has increased, right? Him doing nothing would have made the population increase, right? So you need to say quadrupled. That's the message that the sentence is trying to say. You have to keep that in there. All right. Next question. Not surprisingly, Haussmann did face criticism from both politicians and Parisian citizens. The project cost millions of francs, frustrating city leaders, and the sweeping visual changes that Haussmann instituted left many residents feeling their beloved city was unrecognizable. So we're going to decide between taking it out or leaving it in. So it seems to me like this elaborates on one of the viewpoints said here, the criticism, right? This is a supporting evidence for this viewpoint up here, so I'm going to keep it in, and it's going to help the information, it's going to support the claim in the previous sentence. So we see kept, and we say in the previous sentence supports the previous sentence, not the previous paragraph, because the claim is right here, previous sentence. So that's our answer, choice A. All right. And then last question, we have Haussmann's ideals, however, went on to become influential in the City Beautiful urban planning movement in the United States. Cities like Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C. all owe a debt, to Haussmann. Let's see. So we have cities like Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C. And then we're not going to have any pause here. We're just going to say all owe a debt. So we're not going to add a comma here or a colon here. It's just going to be cities like Chicago, Denver, and Washington, D.C. all owe a debt. All owe a debt to Haussmann without anything in the middle, right? Because all owe a debt to Haussmann is a complete phrase. We're not going to screw that up. We're not going to put something in there. So we can't put a comma in there. So answer choice B here, or answer choice A here is going to be incorrect, and answer choice B is going to be our answer. So that is it for this writing informative passage. Be sure to join us next time when we look at the next writing informative passage and we continue looking at how to tackle these passages. I hope you liked this video or found it informative, and I'll see you next time.